How I Made My First Billion, the truth no one tells you. Not the motivational version, not the inspiring story about following your dreams. The real truth. The uncomfortable truth. The truth that most successful people know but don't share because it doesn't sound good. The truth about how wealth actually happens versus how people think it happens. If you want to know how money really works, comment truth below. I'm recording this because I've spent decades watching people struggle financially. Good people, smart people, hardworking people, people who do everything they're told to do and still can't get ahead. And I've realized they're following advice that doesn't work. They're believing things about money that aren't true. They're ignoring simple, obvious principles because those principles aren't sexy or exciting or what they want to hear. So I'm going to tell you the truth, the real truth about how I made my first billion. Not the sanitized version, not the story that makes me look like a genius, the actual principles that work. The things that anyone can do but most people won't because they're too simple, too obvious, or too uncomfortable. This isn't motivational. This isn't inspiring. This is just truth. And if you're over 50 and you're still struggling financially, or you want more security, or you're worried about retirement, this truth matters. Because it's not too late. You can still apply these principles. You can still build wealth. But you have to stop believing the lies you've been told and start following what actually works. Before I tell you the truth, I need to tell you the lie. The lie that keeps most people poor. The lie that sounds good but doesn't work. The lie that everyone repeats but nobody questions. The lie is this: do what you love and the money will follow. That's not true. That's never been true. That's advice that sounds inspiring but destroys financial futures. Because most things people love don't make money. And the things that make money often aren't what people love doing. I didn't build wealth by doing what I loved. I built wealth by solving problems people would pay to have solved. Those weren't always things I loved. They were often boring, sometimes difficult, frequently uncomfortable. But they worked. They made money, and making money was the goal. If you want to build wealth, you have to stop asking, what do I love? And start asking, what problem can I solve that people will pay me to solve? That's not inspiring. That's not romantic, but it's true. And truth is what works. Here's something nobody tells you. Making your first $100,000 is exponentially harder than making your next $100,000. And making your first million is harder than making your next 10 million. Not because you get smarter, not because you work harder, but because money compounds. Money makes money. The first dollars are the hardest because you're starting from zero. Every dollar after that has helped the dollars you already made can work for you. This is why most people never build wealth. They give up before they hit that first milestone. They think, I've been working for 20 years and I only have $50,000 saved at this rate. I'll never have real money. So they stop trying. They accept that wealth isn't for them. But they're wrong. They're at the hardest part. If they could just push through to $100,000, the next $100,000 would come faster, and the next faster still. Because compound growth is real. It just doesn't feel real until you experience it. If you're over 50 and you've been saving slowly, and it feels impossible, keep going. You're closer than you think. The first cent dollars is brutal. The second is easier. The third, easier still. You just have to get to that first milestone. Don't quit before compound growth kicks in. This is uncomfortable truth, but it's truth. You cannot build real wealth working for someone else. You can build security, you can build comfort, you can build a good life. But you cannot build wealth, because when you work for someone else, you're capped. Your income has a ceiling. No matter how hard you work, how valuable you are, how much you contribute, there's a maximum to what they'll pay you. And that maximum is always less than the value you create. Because if they paid you what you're worth, they wouldn't make money. Your ceiling is their profit margin. I didn't build wealth working for anyone. I built wealth working for myself, building things, taking risk, capturing the full value of what I created instead of accepting a fraction of it as a salary. This doesn't mean quit your job tomorrow, but it does mean if you want real wealth, You eventually have to work for yourself. You have to build something. You have to take the risk of capturing the full value instead of the safety of a salary. And here's what nobody tells you. You can do this at 50, at 60, at any age. You don't need to be young to start a business. You don't need to be a tech genius. You just need to solve a problem people will pay to have solved, and then keep more of what you make instead of giving it to an employer. Truth 3. One big success beats 100 small ones. People waste time on small opportunities, side hustles that make a few $100s, investments that might return a few %, multiple small bets that fragment their attention and energy. That's not how wealth happens. Wealth happens through concentration, through finding one big opportunity and putting everything into it, through focusing all your resources, time, money, energy on the thing that has potential to actually change your financial situation. I didn't build wealth through diversification. I built it through concentration, through identifying one opportunity that could actually matter and betting everything on it. One company, one idea, one concentrated effort that had the potential to actually create wealth instead of just earning income. This is scary. Concentration is scary. It feels risky to put everything into one thing. Diversification feels safer. But diversification also guarantees you'll never build real wealth. Because when you spread yourself across many small opportunities, none of them get enough attention and resources to become big opportunities. If you want to build wealth at 50 or 60, find your one thing, the one business, the one investment, the one opportunity that actually has the potential to change your financial situation, and focus. Put your resources there. Stop fragmenting yourself across things that can't possibly create the outcome you need. Truth 4. Most people never start because they're waiting to feel ready. Here's something I've observed. Most people never build wealth because they never start. Not because they don't have ideas, not because they don't have ability, but because they're waiting to feel ready, waiting to know enough, waiting to have more money saved, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment never comes. You're never ready. You never know enough. You never have enough saved. You never feel prepared. If you wait until you're ready, you wait forever. I wasn't ready when I started my first company. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have enough money. I didn't feel prepared. I started anyway, and I figured it out as I went. That's how it works. You start before you're ready, and you learn by doing. This is especially true for people over 50. You've been waiting your whole life, waiting to feel ready, waiting to know enough, waiting for the right moment. And that waiting has cost you decades of potential growth. Stop waiting. Start now. With what you have, with what you know, imperfectly, scared, unprepared. Start anyway. Because starting before you're ready is the only way wealth happens. Nobody who built wealth felt ready when they started. They started anyway. Truth 5. You have to keep the money you make. This sounds obvious, but most people fail here. They make money and they spend it. They earn more and their spending increases to match. They're on a treadmill making more but never building wealth because they spend everything they make. I built wealth not just by making money but by keeping it. By not increasing my lifestyle every time my income increased. By living below my means even when my means increased dramatically. By treating every dollar I made as a dollar I could reinvest instead of a dollar I could spend. This is where most people fail. They work hard, they make good money, but they spend it all. Nice house, nice car, nice vacations, nice things. And at the end of the year, despite earning 6 figures, they've built no wealth because they spent everything. If you want to build wealth, keep the money, live below your means, don't increase spending when income increases, take the gap between what you make and what you spend and invest it, reinvest it, let it compound. That gap is where wealth comes from, not income, the gap between income and spending. For people over 50, this is crucial. You probably don't have 40 years for compound growth to work. You need to accelerate. And you accelerate by widening the gap, by keeping more of what you make, by living on less than you earn and investing the difference aggressively. Truth 6. Skills matter more than credentials. Nobody asks to see my diploma. Nobody cares where I went to school. Nobody evaluates my success based on credentials. They evaluate based on results, based on what I built, based on what I can do. If you're over 50 and you think you missed your chance because you don't have the right education or the right background, you're wrong. Skills matter, results matter, credentials don't. You can learn skills at any age. You can build things at any age. You can prove competence through results regardless of what degrees you have or don't have. The internet has made this easier than ever. You can learn anything, you can build anything, you can create value regardless of your formal background. Stop using lack of credentials as an excuse. Start building skills that create value. Learn what you need to learn, build what you need to build, prove competence through results. That's what matters. That's what creates wealth. Truth 7. Solve expensive problems. Here's something simple, but most people ignore it. If you want to make a lot of money, solve expensive problems. Problems that cost people or businesses significant money. Problems they're desperate to fix. Problems they'll pay premium prices to have solved. Most people try to solve cheap problems. Problems that annoy people but don't cost them much. Those problems don't make you wealthy because people won't pay much to solve them. I made money solving expensive problems. Problems that were costing businesses millions. Problems they desperately needed fixed. Problems they'd pay premium prices to have solved. That's where wealth comes from, solving problems that are expensive enough that people will pay premium prices for solutions. If you're trying to build wealth at 50 or 60, look for expensive problems. In your industry, in your community, in markets you understand. Find problems that cost people real money, problems they're desperate to solve, then figure out how to solve them. That's worth paying for. That's where wealth comes from. Truth 8. Reinvest everything in the beginning. When I made my first money, I didn't spend it. I didn't buy nice things. I didn't upgrade my lifestyle. I reinvested it back into the business, into growth, into creating more capacity to make more money. This is how wealth compounds. You make money, you reinvest it, it makes more money, you reinvest that, it makes more money still, exponential growth, but only if you reinvest instead of spending. Most people fail here. They make their first $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 and they spend it. They feel like they've earned the right to enjoy it. And they have, but spending it stops the compounding, breaks the cycle, resets them to zero. If you're serious about building wealth, especially if you're starting later in life, you have to reinvest everything in the beginning. Live on as little as possible. Take every dollar you make beyond survival needs and put it back into growth. That's uncomfortable. That requires discipline. But it's how wealth happens. Truth 9. Most advice is from people who haven't built wealth. Here's something uncomfortable. Most advice about money comes from people who don't have money. Teachers teaching wealth building who aren't wealthy. Books written by people who studied wealth but never built it themselves. Advice that sounds good but doesn't work because it's theoretical, not practical. I learned about building wealth by building wealth. Not by reading about it, not by studying it, by actually doing it, making mistakes, learning what works through trial and error, building real wealth through real practice. If you want to build wealth, take advice from people who've actually built wealth. Not from people who teach about wealth, not from people who have credentials about wealth, from people who actually did it, who started with nothing and built something, who can tell you what actually works versus what sounds good, and be skeptical of advice that's too easy or too comfortable. Real wealth building requires sacrifice, requires discomfort, requires doing things that are hard. If the advice sounds easy and comfortable, it's probably wrong. And time is your most valuable asset. Use it wisely. When you're young, you trade time for money. You work hours, you get paid. That's fine when you're young and have lots of time, but it doesn't scale. It doesn't build wealth. Because there are only so many hours you can work. Wealth happens when you stop trading time for money and start building things that make money without your constant time investment. Businesses that run without you, investments that grow without your daily attention. Systems that create value beyond the hours you personally work. I didn't build wealth by working more hours. I built it by building systems that made money beyond my personal time. Companies that functioned without me being there every hour. Investments that grew while I slept. That's leverage. That's how wealth scales. If you're over 50, you don't have unlimited time. You can't spend 40 years building wealth through time for money trades. You need leverage. You need to build or invest in things that make money beyond your personal hours. That's urgent. That's how you build wealth with limited time remaining. Why nobody tells you this? These truths aren't secrets. They're not hidden. They're simple and obvious. So why doesn't everyone know them? Why do people keep following advice that doesn't work? Because these truths are uncomfortable. They require sacrifice. They require taking risks. They require doing hard things. And most people teaching about wealth aren't willing to tell you it's hard, it requires sacrifice, most people won't do it. That doesn't sell. That doesn't inspire. That doesn't make them popular. So they tell you comfortable lies. Do what you love. Follow your passion. The money will follow. Those sound good. Those make people feel good. But they don't work. And the people who teach them usually haven't built wealth themselves. They're making money teaching about wealth, not by building wealth. I'm telling you the uncomfortable truth because I've actually built wealth, and I know what it required. And I know most people won't do it, but some will. And those people deserve to know the truth instead of comfortable lies. What to do now? If you're over 50 and you're watching this and you want to build wealth, here's what you do. First, stop believing the lies. Stop thinking wealth comes from doing what you love or following your passion. Start thinking about solving expensive problems people will pay to have solved. Second, start. Now. Today. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait to know more. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Start with what you have. Figure it out as you go. Imperfectly. But start. Third, work for yourself. Find a way to capture the full value of your work instead of accepting a fraction as a salary. Start a business. Build something. Take the risk of keeping what you make instead of the safety of a paycheck. Fourth, focus. One big opportunity, one concentrated effort. Stop fragmenting yourself across small things that can't possibly create wealth. Find your one thing and put everything into it. Fifth, keep the money. Don't spend it. Reinvest it. Live below your means. Widen the gap between what you make and what you spend. That gap is where wealth comes from. I made my first billion by following these truths. Not by being smarter than everyone else. Not by getting lucky. Not by following some secret formula nobody else knows. By following simple, obvious principles that most people ignore because they're uncomfortable. You can do this. At 50, at 60, at 70, it's not too late. But you have to stop believing comfortable lies and start following uncomfortable truths. You have to stop waiting to feel ready and start now. You have to stop trading time for money and start building leverage. You have to stop spending everything you make and start keeping it. These truths won't make you feel good. They won't inspire you. They won't make you think wealth is easy. But they'll work if you apply them, if you follow them. If you do the hard, uncomfortable things they require. That's how I built wealth. That's the truth nobody tells you. Not because it's secret, but because it's uncomfortable. And most people would rather hear comfortable lies than uncomfortable truths. Share this if you're tired of comfortable lies and ready for uncomfortable truths. Comment truth if you're going to apply these principles. Subscribe for real advice about wealth from someone who actually built it instead of just teaching about it.